Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, guys, I'm joined by the Loremaster of Sotek, and we're going to be answering the age-old question, who would win? Essentially, we're going to be taking a look at legendary lords from the Warhammer Fantasy Battle universe, pitting them against each other, taking a look at some of the different variables, and answering the question, who would win in a fight? So on that note, we are here with the Loremaster of Sotek, and he's going to give you guys some details regarding the criteria and the different variables we've introduced here. So Sotek, what do you got for us?
All right, so for this particular series, the way we're running it is that all of the characters will be bringing all of their magical equipment, all of their special abilities, all of their unique gimmicks. The exception being that these are intended to be one-on-one duels, just fights to the death. So they will not have any bodyguard units, and they also won't be able to use their abilities as generals, for instance. So for Archaeon, when he does show up, you won't be seeing the Swords of Chaos at his back, and you won't be seeing Immortals with Grimgor, for instance.
Yeah, I feel like that would be... just out of curiosity, before we get into the main video, like, who is more powerful, the Mortals or the Swords of Chaos? Just a bit of a fun teaser to this series here.
Swords of Chaos, no question.
Yeah, pretty hands down. All right, guys, so this is going to be a regular series we do have here on the channel. The first episode is going to be here on my channel, and the next one will be on the Loremaster of Sotek. So if you guys have any suggestions regarding, who would you like to see fight in the Warhammer Fantasy Battles universe, of course, excluding the ones we do in this video, let us know in the comment section below. But without further ado, I think let us go ahead and jump into round one, which is going to be a showdown between Archaeon the Ever-Chosen and Malekith the Witch King. So as far as my prediction as someone who just has a topical understanding of lore, Wikipedia articles, Total War Warhammer, I would probably go with Archaeon the Ever-Chosen. It just seems like he's a bit of a figurehead of chaos here. But Sotek, what is the tale of the tape in this matchup, and who would win?
All right, so for these two legendary lords, they're fairly evenly matched, at least at a surface level. We have two heavily armored, melee-focused characters who ride monstrous mounts, and that Dorgar is technically a monstrous creature in that he is a demonic steed. He's not actually a horse like he looks, even though on Total War Warhammer it might be a little deceiving. But there are some key differences that do give us a fairly clear decider. They both have 4 magic items, but whereas with Malekith, we have the Destroyer and then 3 purely defensive items in the Armor of Midnight, Supreme Spell Shield, and Circle of Iron. With Archaeon, he's got more of kind of a mix, where you've got his melee item, the Slayer of Kings, which is very, very powerful. And then for defense, he relies on the Armor of Morkar and the Eye of Shirian. But the Crown of Domination is much more of a leadership item, which isn't really going to help him in this matchup. And of course, he doesn't have the ever-critical Swords of Chaos at his back. He's all on his lonesome. So looking at the nitty-gritty details, we start to see a couple of advantages pile up in Malekith's favor, in that he rides his dragon, Seraphon, who, although is a black dragon, which is one of the weaker breeds, Seraphon is a bit better than most of her kin. So she kind of makes up for the fact that she is a black dragon and is quite a bit better than Dorgar. Dorgar is very quick, but unfortunately he just doesn't stand up to a dragon. Ultimately, though, this fight comes down to the items. Because even in special abilities where you have Malekith bringing things like Hakari's Blessing, Always Strike First, being an elf, and other things like Murderous Prowess to his side, Archaeon counters even that with the 4 marks of chaos that he has with him on his body. However, the big deciding factor ultimately is down to one single item, which is Malekith's magic weapon, Destroyer. Because what Destroyer does that makes it so sinister and deadly is that every time it strikes an opponent, there's pretty much a 50-50 chance that whenever he hits you, he basically shatters the enchantments that are binding your items together and can even sap the very power to control the winds of magic out of people, making them just not into wizards. So every time that Archaeon gets hit, there's a chance that one of his magic items essentially just goes kaput. And Archaeon doesn't really have a way to answer that. His best answer, of course, is the Eye of Shirian, which allows him to sort of see into the future a couple seconds and see all the possible futures. And if he can figure out where to be at the right time, he can dodge effortlessly. But it's kind of a war of attrition, where can Archaeon, even unleashing Uzul, which is the greater demon bound inside the Slayer of Kings, his sword, even with that, can he kill Malekith before Destroyer breaks down all of his abilities and items? And the answer, just quite frankly, is no.
Hell yeah.
Archaeon does not have a way through physical means by overpowering Malekith, because Malekith is just as good of a combatant. He's not quite as tough as Archaeon is, but he makes up for it by being very fast, having a stronger mount, and of course, his defensive items are much better geared toward defense, especially the Supreme Spell Shield and Circlet of Iron. Whereas Archaeon also can't win on a magical playing field because he's just not as good of a wizard as Malekith. Archaeon's only had roughly a century or two to practice magic, and it was sort of a gimmick he picked up when he got the Mark of Tzeentch, whereas Malekith has been practicing magic for thousands and thousands of years, on top of being a really strong warrior. In the end, I gotta say that fairly handily the win goes to Malekith, just because sooner or later, Destroyer is going to strip away Archaeon's ability to cast magic and strip away all of his magic items, leaving just a beefcake on a horse, and that's just not going to win.
I love that, a beefcake on a horse. Quite an upset here in the first round. I actually thought, personally, that Archaeon would take it. And also something else to just clarify, this isn't the end times version of Archaeon and Malekith, correct?
Oh, yes. No, these are their canonical, these are their modern day interpretations, or 8th edition, for those who are more associated with Warhammer. We're not going into the end times because things got super whack, and having characters like the Eternity King and Archaeon Lord of the End Times, when they were pulling off some just mind-blowing feats that didn't make any sense, we're leaving those in the far future.
Just leaving them in the pits. Oh man, I love it. Well, that was some cool information. So essentially, Malekith's mount, obviously more powerful than Dorkar. He's a better sorcerer, and the Destroyer, though, seems to be the main variable here, right? Just the fact that it can just eventually wear down Archaeon in a war of attrition.
Oh, yeah. Any item that can strip away someone's ability to cast magic is almost pretty much going to be a guaranteed winner in most of these types of duels, especially because if you don't have magic, you're kind of boned against most magic casters, because magic in the lore is much more powerful than it tends to be in, a conventional game, because the game has to be fair.
Yeah.
In the lore and even in tabletop, that was not necessarily the case.
Yeah. Don't you just have Slann blowing up the moon and moving mountains and just all kinds of crazy stuff?
Oh yeah, creating mountain ranges and shifting around continents just because they feel like it, even though it doomed a couple billion people.
No problem.
It's all part of the.
All in a day's work. Great plan. All that good stuff. Well, that was quite an upset. Definitely some interesting stuff. But I think it's time for round 2. There's going to be a showdown between everyone's favorite, a bit of a meme in Total War Warhammer. We have Grimgor Ironhide, who is a lot stronger in lore, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to be facing off against Tyrion. So what do you got for us, Sotek?
All right. So this one is pretty tricky. Grimgor Ironhide does come in at a little bit of a downside in that, much like Archaeon, he's not going to have his beloved bodyguard with him, which is a very important strength. However, Grimgor relies a lot less on his bodyguard for protection than Archaeon does, because Grimgor is just a beast. His abilities in combat are just so ridiculously off the rails that it's kind of hard to put into words, in that he's just kind of had some goofy feats over the years and has been functionally unbeatable except for to a standstill. Tyrion, on the other hand, does not have that beastly quality. He's not nearly as powerful and not nearly as tough as Grimgor. However, he does have much fancier magic equipment and is easily the fastest character that we'll be looking at today in any rate. There are a couple characters who can match him in speed, but there's no one who's faster. Tyrion is insanely quick, and he's incredibly skilled. Tyrion does not show up alone to the battlefield, though, as he will be riding his elven steed Malhinder, who is the fastest elven horse alive and is a descendant of the great father of horses, and is actually very, very strong for a horse. He's almost kind of like Dorgar in that he's much bigger and tougher than you would expect, which, if you know anything about horses, is quite frankly terrifying.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, though, it kind of comes down to the crucial thing of, is Tyrion strong enough to get through Grimgor's defenses? And if he is, can he survive Grimgor's colossal blows in time to do that? But before I get into it, I want to make sure we get your prediction on this one.
Yeah, man, I'm going to have to go with Grimgor. I know he's a bit of a meme in Total War, but from what I've read in Wikipedia articles, I've just heard stories of him just annihilating hordes by himself and just putting the ogre kingdoms in their place. I don't know all the details, but it just seems like he's a bit of a powerhouse. So I'm going to go with Grimgor Ironhide. All
right. So looking at their items, they both bring much less than our previous combatants at the table. Tyrion brings 3, Sunfang, his magical blade that can breathe fire, the dragon armor of Anarion, which of course comes from Anarion the Defender, his great ancestor, which gives him very, very powerful save, in addition to making him practically immune to fire damage,
Jeez.
and the Heart of Avalorn, which protects him from magic, which won't help him in this particular matchup.
Definitely not.
And it has a nifty little ability where it can explode, essentially, and if it does, he'll come back to life temporarily. Hopefully to win, and then immediately go get healed. Grimgor, on the other hand, only shows up with 2 items. They're very blunt but effective Gitsnik, his beloved colossal axe, and his blood-forged armor. At the end of the day, Tyrion is very, very fast, very, very skilled, and Grimgor would have, honestly, kind of a hard time leveling blows on him, but Tyrion is strong enough to get through the blood-forged armor, but at the end of the day, Grimgor is just much better designed for an ongoing fight because of Gitsnik. The thing about Gitsnik that makes it so deadly for an orc and makes Grimgor so terrifying is that it makes Grimgor as fast as an elf when it comes to striking.
Jeez, that's brutal.
It has kind of it's sort of a sentient weapon and kind of guides Grimgor to where he needs to be to either block or strike at his opponents, and allows him to just move supernaturally fast, which is a scary as shit quality for an orc. At the end of the day, this fight would be incredibly close, and honestly, I think if the Heart of Avalorn were to do its job well, it could go to Tyrion, but at the end of the day, I would say this one's very close.
Yeah, I can tell.
Close. It kind of comes down to opinion after a certain point. But I would say that Grimgor would eke this one out, probably in a 60-40 win ratio.
Yeah, I think Grimgor needed the win too. He's fallen on dark times, at least in our rendition of Warhammer here in Total War. But yeah, okay. I definitely think so. Yeah,
it would be close. And like the Malhinder, I don't think the steed would help Tyrion much because Grimgor would probably just kill it almost immediately as soon as the fight started. I mean, this is a guy who punches dragons for breakfast, so I don't think he would have a problem with a stronger than average horse.
Right.
But yeah, like Sunfang is a really, really powerful weapon that hits really hard, and it can breathe fire. It could easily pierce Grimgor's armor, but Grimgor himself is just a lot tougher than Tyrion, and that toughness is just gonna slowly come in his favor.
Yeah,
it would be close though. It would be close.
Yeah, Grimgor just seems like he's a bit of a force of nature and lore, just like. And as far as like his frame, like Grimgor, if you were like standing next to Tyrion, like how tall is he? Is he just like a mountain, or like what is like the comparison there?
Grimgor is considered to be roughly the size of a troll.
Oh, so he's like Throgg size then, right?
Yeah, that's roughly his canonical height.
Oh boy.
He's quite a bit bigger than Total War portrays him. For whatever reason, yeah, he's a mountain of an orc because he's the biggest orc we know of next to Gorfang Rotgut, who is also a very big orc. But Grimgor's a black orc, whereas Gorfang's a regular orc. And Tyrion is very, very swift and strong. But even in the lore, there have been instances where we have seen Tyrion on his back foot, or Tyrion barely winning. Whether it was his duel with, I believe it was Urian Poisonblade, who was a teacher of his and was Malekith's like best assassin that he personally raised from a babe just for the sake of killing people. And Tyrion beat him through luck more than anything else. And even when Tyrion fought Nakari, the great keeper of secrets, granted Tyrion was very young, he fought Nakari twice in his life, and both times would have lost if it hadn't been for Teclis. Grimgor, this guy has never struggled to win or at least draw a fight. There is no record in existence of anyone reliably beating him or getting even close. Archaeon's lieutenant, his grand marshal, Vardek Krom, managed to sort of catch him at a standstill by playing purely defensive and beat his army so bad that Grimgor had to retreat because he was the only one left.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like that's the worst Grimgor has ever lost.
So it sounds like Grimgor definitely is going to be the winner here for sure. I mean,
yes. When you pull away from the stats and look at a lore angle, especially, which is kind of the point of these matchups, Grimgor's lore feats really start to stack up in his.
Yeah, good. Glad to hear that. So Grimgor Ironhide is going to be the champion of our second round versus Tyrion. Now I think it's time for round 3, which is going to be pertinent because we did just have the launch of the Curse of the Vampire Coast. And in round 3, we have a showdown between Luthor Harkin and Manfred von Karstein. So what do you got for us? Oh, and my prediction also, I should say, I'm gonna go with my boy Luthor here. I feel like he's got some good tools against magic users. So what is the verdict, my friend?
All right, so this one is also pretty tricky, just because Luthor is not a character that shows up super often. He does pop up fairly compared to other characters of his class, which by that I tend to mean characters who aren't stereotypically very popular. But he's still someone we have to infer a little bit about due to his history.
Got it.
When you have Manfred versus Luthor, though, there are a couple of really big gaps in that Manfred is the most powerful vampire that the general public has been introduced to so far when it comes to casting.
Got it.
He is an extraordinary wizard. He's mastered 2 lores of magic, which is very, very rare in that he uses both the lore of death and the lore of vampires. Of course, being a vampire, he's a very, very skilled melee combatant who is unnaturally tough thanks to some nifty armor that he wears. And his sword generally just gives him more magic, just infinite, endless levels of magic. Luthor, on the other hand, this is kind of like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object in that Luthor is the opposite of a good magic user.
Yeah.
He has become such a bad user of magic that he's literally a void that magic just falls into and dies. And that I do not know of a character, dwarves included, who are more resistant to magic than Luthor is. Which pretty much means that from an offensive standpoint, anything that Manfred throws at Luthor isn't going to stick. It's just going to bounce right off of him, and he's not even going to notice it. And while Luthor doesn't have traditional magic weaponry, he does bring a nifty brace of pistols with him into the battle. And those pistols, while terrible with zombies using them, Luthor is actually a terrifyingly good shot. He may be undead, but all those supernatural senses of the vampires has not faded from him in time. And most importantly, Luthor is a much better melee combatant than Manfred is. Because Manfred, although cool, does not have the line of the Blood Dragon in him. Luthor is a direct descendant of Abarash, the head of the Blood Dragon bloodline, who are known for their martial feats, whereas Manfred, of course, is a von Karstein, who are known for being generally a bit more balanced, but being more sophisticated and having nasty little political schemes and kind of do a more interesting, do a more interesting mix between magic and fighting. That being said, ultimately, so while magic doesn't help Manfred offensively, I should say it does help him defensively. He can still use his magic to heal himself. He can still use his magic to buff himself. And he just can't really use anything that will affect Luthor. They both have the hunger, so they both, heal while they're fighting. So really it comes down to, can Manfred buff himself enough to make up the differences between the two while Luthor is constantly shooting him in the face with pistols. Now, I should say that outside of Total War, these two actually have a slightly different matchup because neither of them can ride the variety of mounts that we see in Total War. Luthor was actually restricted purely to being on foot, while Manfred von Karstein could not ride anything bigger than an Abyssal Terror, which is kind of like the Undead's version of a Griffin.
Okay, got it.
That being said, Luthor is strong enough, scary enough with a brace of pistols that pretty much anything short of a dragon he would kill nearly instantly, forcing a foot fight. But after looking at their stats, comparing their personalities and how conniving they are, I would say at the end of the day, this would probably go to Manfred. Luthor, although very, very strong, a good fighter, and having ranged weapons that Manfred really doesn't have a great answer to, he unfortunately has a shattered mind, which is only going to help him about a third of the time. But if though any of those other 2/3 times come up, he's basically just gonna kind of forget where he is, or is going to forget how to even use his pistols, or just any number of problems. Whereas Manfred is going to be constantly scheming and plotting and planning the entire time they're fighting, trying to get an edge, exploiting every weakness. This is a guy who assassinated his own bloodfather, being Vlad von Karstein. He got him and Isabella killed on purpose. He got Conrad killed, and then he killed his other 2 or 3 brothers just to get them out of the way. Like, this guy is cold-blooded, and nothing is too low for him. He will fight as dirty as possible.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's going to push him over. Plus the armor of Tempelhof. Very, very underestimated item in that a fun fact is that Manfred literally took a bunch of other vampires who lived in Tempelhof and sort of had them cremated after he brutally betrayed and murdered them, and used their remains to make his armor, therefore empowering himself with their essence. So he kind of is a lot tougher than you would expect of a typical vampire.
Jeez. Yeah, so that's a bit of an upset as well. I really thought that Luthor's, resistance to magic would help him out quite a bit. And of course, his martial prowess, as I just learned that he's a blood dragon vampire, descendant of that. But would you say that if Luthor Harkon's mind wasn't fractured, that he would be able to maybe have a better chance, or would be able to certainly beat Manfred?
I think if Luthor had his mind united, he would win.
Okay, so it really comes down to that. It sounds like that could just be fatal, right? If he has one of his unfortunate personalities, he's just going to be at such a disadvantage.
Right, which is very unlikely to happen. Granted, one of them, of his known personalities that are documented, some of them could help him, but at the end of the day, the problem with Luthor is that he's constantly just bouncing around. That's his ultimate weakness. That's what screws him. For instance, when he tried, quote unquote, to ally with Morothy. Morothy is a very conniving dark elf, and he made an alliance with her to go up against the Lizardmen. But he started having personality swaps while he was working with her, and suddenly he decided he didn't like her so much anymore and that she was a stupid hag. So he tried to backstab her and instead got the crap kicked out of him and left in a Lizardman prison to rot and die until Nagash saved his butt in the end times.
Jeez. Okay. I see the split personality thing definitely being an issue, but I think that was definitely a fun matchup. But looks like Manfred's going to be the winner here. So as far as my predictions, I'm 1 for 3 right now, which not the best, not the worst. It could be 0 for 3.
I'm curious how the people in chat are doing.
Yeah. And if you guys are watching, we'd love to hear your predictions beforehand and how you guys are doing through the course of these. And it's definitely quite a bit of fun. Now,
these are just my opinion. Feel free to disagree.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Give a reason. That's all I want.
You got solid opinions. I definitely think the magic items in your assessments have a point here. So next one. This is probably going to be my favorite one. I feel like it might be a little bit lopsided, but you'll certainly shed some light on that. But number 4, today we're going to have a showdown between Orion versus Khazrak. So my prediction is going to be Orion. I just feel like he's just such a powerful force of nature in Total War Warhammer, and Khazrak. I don't know. I just don't get that same vibe from him. I don't know why. But anyways, what's the tail of the tape? Who's going to win this one and why?
All right, so we've got a classic matchup here of Beastmen versus Wood Elves, one of the true rivalries, as I like to call them. I've always been a big proponent that every single race in the Warhammer Fantasy Universe has a ultimate enemy that's kind of like the ultimate matchup between those two races, excepting I usually don't count the Chaos Dwarves in that vote, but sometimes I can squeeze them in there. But in any event, Beastmen versus Wood Elves is such a classic. They're both ambush fighters. They have really interesting tactics. And Orion and Khazrak would both be masterful when it came to armies fighting each other. But unfortunately, we're looking at individuals fighting each other. And at that point, we're literally dealing with a god, or at least a demigod, versus a beastman who is relatively smart.
Sounds a little unfair.
Unfortunately for Khazrak, that's about the only thing he's got going for him. Is that he's pretty smart, which at the end of the day is not going to save him from the terrifying amount of magic items brought to the battlefield by Orion. I will say that Khazrak does have, Scourge, which is okay.
Got a whip.
And he has the Dark Mail, which the Dark Mail is great if he was fighting a wizard, but he's not. So unfortunately, we're dealing with a situation where Orion could show up on the battlefield, and he could easily, if they had to fight in melee, rip Khazrak's arms off of his body and just beat him to death. He could use his bow, the Hawk's Talon, from probably 300-400 yards to just shoot him through both eye sockets with perfect precision. The one where he has an eye and the one where he doesn't. And just kill his ass. Or he could decide to opt for the Spear of Karnos instead and impale him from a slightly shorter distance with great ease, because Orion is one of the most accurate marksmen in the setting. And, that's even if we basically put Orion in there naked with just the cloak of Aisha, and we gave Khazrak all of his crap, and hell, let's even put him on a chariot, which he couldn't do which he never really did in the lore, and he couldn't do in tabletop, but Total War did it, so fine. Put him on a chariot. He still gets the crap kicked out of him.
Yeah.
Like, the only way this would be a fair fight is if you took Orion's hounds, which are just his 2 pet dogs, and you had them, which there are usually 2 of them, you had them fight Khazrak 2v1. That would be a closer and more reasonable fight than making Orion fight Khazrak by the poor bastard self.
That's really funny, man. I'm glad we have a really lopsided one. So, champion for round 4 is going to be Orion. I love the analogy of like him ripping off Khazrak's arms and like beating him to death, because it's kind of the same in Total War Warhammer. Like Orion would just dumpster Khazrak so badly.
It would literally like be asking an Ewok to fight Chewbacca. It's just not really. It's just not really a fair match. It's a very ferocious Ewok. Yeah, it's very clever, but it's not going to help it too much.
And I feel like even a clever Beastman is going to be nowhere near as like intelligent as Orion, right?
Yeah, I mean, Khazrak would be troublesome for the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves suffer from the problem every other Order race does, in that they tend to get into a routine with how they expect the forces of chaos to act, and then you get someone who mixes things up, like Morgor or Malagor or Khazrak, especially Malagor and Khazrak, who are both very clever and actually use strategy, which is so rare among the Beastmen.
Yeah.
And when it happens, it results in thousands and thousands of poor innocent people dying because nobody knows how to handle it.
Yeah. Okay, so I see that. So yeah, just in terms of like a one-on-one duel, Orion is just massively destroys Khazrak.
Yeah, some of these ones, like, there are situations where the other guy could win. Khazrak could do fuck all, and he would still, like, Orion could. There's not a way for Khazrak to physically kill the bastard.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's great. All right, champion for the number 4 round is Orion. And I would actually love to hear if anyone in chat, anyone in the comment section thought Khazrak would win and why. That would actually be quite interesting. But champion's
you're wrong, but
you're wrong. And champion is going to be Orion for our 4th round today. And our 5th and final round is going to be quite a thematic matchup as well. We're going to have a showdown between Ungrim, Iron Fist, and Throgg. And I definitely think this is going to be quite a tough cockfight here, but I'm going to have to go with Ungrim. I love the dwarves. They're one of my favorite, factions thematically. So I'm going to go with my boy Ungrim here. So what do you got for us, Sotek?
All right, so here we've got the Ultimate Troll Slayer versus the Ultimate Troll. Pretty cool matchup, honestly. And both of them have some pretty neat little buffs they're bringing with them. Ungrim is, of course, a masterful monster slayer. He has some really, really spicy, powerful magic items. The Axe of Dargo, the Dragon Cloak of Fear Scar, and the Slayer Crown, which all provide him with really interesting, unique buffs. And then you have Throgg, who doesn't actually bring much in the way of a magical item, but his special rules more than make up for it. He's got a colossal hammer, which is not magical, but he makes very efficient use of it, all things considered. And his regeneration is just mind-blowing. There is nothing in the Warhammer Fantasy universe that regenerates damage as well as Throgg. I mean, we're talking about a guy who can literally have an axe chop off one of his arms, and he will start recovering from it in a matter of seconds.
Jeez.
Whether he decides to pick up his old arm and try and reattach it, or just grow a new one in a matter of probably 5 to 10 minutes. Like, his regeneration is on horrifying levels. Plus, he has mutant regeneration. So it's not only a higher degree than other trolls in that he regenerates faster than them, but when he regenerates, his regenerated parts tend to come with augments. That's why he has an extra mouth in his belly. Fun fact is that he was horribly wounded there. And when it regenerated, it turned into a giant snarling mouth. So that if anyone tried to stab him there, he could just eat them.
Well, that's adaptive biology.
Oh, yeah. So ultimately, this comes down to, can Ungrim chop up Throgg faster than Throgg can heal? There are a couple little factors, like Throgg does have a horrifying ability known as Copious Vomit, which, yes, while trolls are known to vomit acidic, horrible bile that can melt through armor as if it's not even there, Throgg's is actually magical and is horrifyingly deadly and has been known to one-shot many, many would-be heroes who had no business losing to Throgg, except for he puked on them and they just died instantly.
Jeez, that's brutal.
That being said, Unfortunately for Throgg, Ungrim does come prepared for the cheating BS that most monsters expect. The Slayer crown, which has been passed down since King Beregar, which was a very, very long time ago. This crown basically makes Ungrim go from being a tough dwarf to a stupidly tough dwarf. It literally hardens his armor and his skin until it's like stone. On top of that, you have the Dragon Cloak of Fear Scar, which is practically impenetrable because it was obviously ripped off the flesh of the dragon himself, Fear Scar, who was very, very nasty. And it makes him not only immune to flaming, but it just provides some really, really nice bonuses, and the Copious Vomit just wouldn't be able to get through it. As long as Ungrim didn't get like picked up and had barfed directly in his own face, he would, and even then, I'm not entirely sure would actually kill Ungrim. It would probably just piss him off. So, at the end of the day, the regeneration of Throgg is very powerful, and there is kind of a what-if factor with the regeneration in that, theoretically, if Ungrim was hacking away at Throgg, there is actually a moderate chance that Throgg's regeneration would mutate him, and one of his mutations would give him the edge he needed to defeat Ungrim. But most of the time, Ungrim is actually going to come out on top of Throgg. And the reason is that Throgg is strong, but Ungrim is stronger. And Throgg is tough, but Ungrim is tougher. And Ungrim's dragon scale cloak is about as good at protecting him as Throgg's regeneration is at protecting him.
Got it.
And Ungrim is a seriously skilled combatant, and he's very fast for a dwarf. You wouldn't expect him to be because he has a giant ass double-handed axe, but Ungrim is actually one of the fastest dwarves when it comes to swinging that axe around. And Throgg is slow as fuck and is not very skilled. Throgg just sort of swings his sledgehammer around wildly without too much aim and tends to just stomp on people and puke and hope that does the job. Ungrim, this is a guy who's killed giants that are so big that they are giants compared to other giants, and he has soloed them without his magical items.
Yeah.
You know, this is a guy who's killed dragons. This is a guy who's killed chaos monsters, and it's just generally just a stupid bat. This is a guy who has been trying as hard as he can to die against something for like the last 200 years, and he just can't figure it out. It's just not possible.
Man,
it's not against conventional foes. Unfortunately, Throgg's just another monster skull going on top of the pile.
I love it, man. That's music to my ears. What a glorious way to close out this series of battles today with a victory for Ungrim. You know, it'd be really interesting to see a showdown between, I don't want to get, too much into it, but seeing Ungrim fight Grimgor, I feel like that'd be really fun. But yeah, that's going to be number 5. So each of these videos is going to have 5 showdowns. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a comment below letting us know what matchups you would like to see. And this can be any character in Total War Warhammer, which is probably a little bit more pertinent to you guys, or anyone in the Warhammer fantasy universe. So someone who perhaps may be introduced in the future, or just, anyone within the universe, as I said. So big thanks to Sotek. If you guys haven't seen his channel, make sure to check it out. This series, we're going to be alternating between our channels. So this is going to be the first one. And the second one will, of course, be on his channel, which is going to be quite a bit of fun. And we're going to be taking your guys' suggestions. So whichever ones in the comment section get the most attention or the most upvotes, and we're probably going to be going with those bad boys. So, Sotek, closing note, you got anything you'd like to say to the people? Any feedback for the video? And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I would say to chat that one thing that we could be potentially interested in doing if y'all have some fun ideas is maybe at the end of the literal matchups using the rules that we've previously established so that the series makes sense. If y'all want to see like a ridiculous matchup with a goofy set of circumstances, like 2 characters are fighting, but only, they're dropped 500 feet out of the air and who wins, who hits the ground first or whatever. Yeah. I'm more than happy to entertain something like that at the end of these kinds of videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe even something with like their bodyguards, right? We could do like Archaeon with the Swords of Chaos versus like, someone else, like, I don't know, or a combination of characters. I think that would definitely be pretty fun, right?
Generally the first 5 will follow the general format, but I'm always happy to throw in a surprise ringer or whatever you call the entertaining matches at the end that are just for glory and fun. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. like I kind of said earlier, my opinions are not technically canonical. Granted, I have a lot of lore and a lot of background and a lot of studying, and I feel very confident in my opinions.
Yeah.
But I would love to see what y'all think in the comment section down below, especially with their reasons. I would be happy to read them.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining, man. And again, guys, please make sure to head over to Loremaster of Sotek's channel. He has a ton of awesome lore videos. Like if you guys are looking to take a deep dive and learn about the Lord of the End Times or Heinrich Kemmler and just all these different characters that are in Total War Warhammer, he has these awesome videos on those guys and is definitely one of the premier sources of lore out there. So yeah, guys, make sure to check him out. And thanks again for joining.